So you can't figure out which MIG welder to buy. It's a daunting task and you're confused as all get out. Well, stay tuned to this video because in this video we're going to go over 4 different MIG welders and what you're going to need based on your welding style.
Don't worry about that little guy.
So in today's video, we're going to address some of the things and questions and other stuff that I get about choosing the MIG welder that's right for you, or choosing the welder in general that's right for you. But today, we're going to focus on MIG welders. We have 4 of them over here. All different types, all different voltages, all different amperage capabilities, and all kinds of stuff. So what I'm going to do is take you guys through each and every single one of these 4 welders, and you can determine whether or not they will work for the method of welding, the stuff that you're welding, the projects you're doing, and all of that. So you can make an informed decision on which welder you should buy, how much money you're going to need to spend, and overall what's going to be your best bet. So I think what we'll do is we're going to start at the very beginning, which is that little guy right there. That little guy right there is what's known as a flux core MIG welder. Now, a flux core MIG welder has no gas input. Therefore, you do not need a tank, you don't need gas, you don't need anything. It uses a wire that has a flux inside the core, hence flux core. Now, you don't need any sort of shielding gas. You don't need any sort of special anything to weld with a flux core welder. However, the benefits sometimes can outweigh the cons. We'll go over the benefits first. Now, what's nice about flux core welding is if you're going to be welding mainly outdoors in an environment where it's constantly windy, having a gas-fed MIG welder is going to cause you issue because the wind is going to constantly blow your shielding gas away. So utilizing flux core in a scenario like this is great because you don't need the shielding gas. The flux inside the core of the wire creates a bubble around the puddle to protect it from oxidation. That's one of the benefits of a flux core welder. Another benefit is you don't need a tank. You don't need gas. You don't have that extra expense. You don't need the regulator for the gas. So that's going to be some of the benefits. Now the cons, the weld bead is not going to look as pretty as if you were using gas. Also, in some instances, the weld penetration is not going to be as good as if you were using gas. So those are some of the things to think of. Now that particular welder, cost-wise, is about $159. And so very inexpensive to get into, and very easy to maintain because you're not having to carry around all the extra accessories with it. Now, the main downside of this system is it's only a 100 amp system. It runs on 110 volt, 120 volt normal outlet power, and you're only going to get the ability to weld sheet metal. You could probably go up to 11 gauge sheet metal or 16th inch sheet metal with it. You're not going to be doing any kind of structural welding with this particular machine because it's too low amperage. So if you have something where you're constantly finding yourself having to weld little pieces of metal together just randomly and you don't need a full setup, then this is the guy for you. And we'll summarize all this in the end. Now, the next machine over, which is this guy right here, that is my Yes Welder MIG 205DS. That is a 205 amp MIG machine. It also requires shielding gas. You need to use a 75% argon, 25% CO2 mix if you're welding with normal ER70, S2, or S6 wire steel, basic mild steel welding. The benefit of a welder like this one is it is 205 amps, which is pretty decent output. It is also a dual voltage machine. And I can show you that because we've got your standard 30 amp 240 volt plug. And all we have to do is unplug that, and then we have a standard 20 amp or 15 amp outlet plug. So you can run this machine on dual voltage. Now the downfall of doing that, you get a benefit and a downfall, is that when it's on 120 volts, you can only weld at 140 amps maximum current. When it's on 220 volts or 240 volts, you get your full 205 amps. So, great machine. Now, an interesting little thing about this particular machine and the rest of the MIG machines that we'll be looking at is these machines are also capable of running flux core wire. So you have an option with each one of these machines. You can literally put solid steel wire in it and run your shielding gas, or if you need to take it out in the field, run it off a generator, weld a trailer out in the middle of the farm, this welder, you can throw some flux core wire in it and it'll weld just fine with flux core wire. It can be set up to do that. There's selections for doing that. So great machine overall. The cost on this particular machine is anywhere between $300 and $500, depending on sales and everything else. And this is from Yes Welder. Now, the next machine is the MIG 250 Pro. Now, the benefits of this particular machine, again, we get our gas shielding. We also get the capability for flux core. But with the MIG 250 Pro, you're allowed to change more of the settings within the welder. It actually has a little display right here. On that display, you can change a ton of the different settings. It's a professional grade welder, meaning that you have full 100% control over every aspect of how you're welding. Now, with both of these machines, both of these Yes Welder machines, the 205DS and the 250 Pro, they both also allow you to do stick welding and lift arc TIG welding. So they are multi-process machines. They do MIG, TIG, and stick. However, you will need to, run your shielding gas accordingly for TIG welding to 100% argon, depending on what you're welding. And you don't need any shielding gas for stick welding. So these machines, I think, are a great buy because both of these are, anywhere from $300 to $600, depending on, the time of year that you buy them, the sales that Yes Welder has going on. And these welders you can utilize to grow. So if you start out with flux core, you can move on to gas shielded welding, and then you can move up to the pro setting machine, and then from there, I think you're good. These are both all around great machines for the home hobbyist, for the professional, for whatever it may be. They are a little bit more costly than the $159 flux core welder only. However, they do have a lot more versatility. They have replaceable torches. This does not have a replaceable torch. They have DINS connectors for the positive-negative setup. They come with the TIG welding equipment. They come with a bunch of other stuff. But as far as MIG welding goes, the 205DS is a great machine for the beginner because you can grow with it. And the MIG 250 Pro is great when you've outgrown your 205DS because you get a little bit more amperage, slightly bigger torch, and a few other odds and ends. Final welder that you can see right over my shoulder here, this red guy, that's the Yes Welder, the First S MP200. Now what this guy is, and some of you may have seen this, I did a video on it a while back, that machine is an all-in-one machine, meaning it does MIG, TIG, stick, and a plasma cutter. So for the home hobbyist that needs a little bit of everything, but not a lot of everything, that welder's got you covered. That welder's going to be great for doing MIG, TIG, stick, and light plasma cutting. And when I say light, it's a 200 amp dual voltage machine. So you can run it at 120 volts, you can run it at 240 volts. That particular machine is great. However, the all-in-one machines do come with a caveat. If one thing breaks in that machine, the whole machine breaks. So if you lose the plasma cutter, it's probably because you lost the power supply, which means now you lost the MIG welder, the TIG welder, the stick welder, all of it. So that's going to be something to kind of keep your eyes open for, is the all-in-ones are great if you're going to use them a little bit of the time, not if you're going to be using them constantly, because if one thing goes, everything goes. And then the machine is pretty much useless. So you're better off just buying a dedicated machine for each one of the tasks that you're performing. So now that we've seen the 4 different machines, and I believe that the first S is $1,000 for the all-in-one, which still for everything isn't that bad. So now that we've gone over each one of these 4 different welders, let's take a second. I'm bringing you guys in over here so you can see me better. All right, now that we've gone over all 4 of these welders, let's go over a little bit of the theory behind why I wanted to bring you guys this video. So there are many different types of reasons that you would want to get into welding. Now, that may be so you can just fix things around your house. That may be so that, you can restore a car that you've been working on forever and do some body work on it. It may just be because you want to get into welding and you want to know where to start and what to do, and you want to take it and make it a career for yourself. Now, that's all well and good. However, if you're steered in the wrong direction when it comes to purchasing equipment for your first welder or, welders to come thereafter, then you're going to have a pretty bad time with it. So one thing I can say is for anyone watching this, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that you should buy a flux core only welder other than the low cost. The low initial cost is the only benefit that you're going to get as a new welder. You're not going to be able to grow with the machine. You're going to be stuck to doing flux core welding all the time, and you will never have the option to add a gas shielding setup to that welder. And to me, it just doesn't make any sense. You might as well spend a couple $100 extra and get yourself one that can accept a gas shielding setup so that you're not limited to, just being able to do one specific type of welding. Let's take it a step further, and let's just say that, you're a beginning welder. You don't want to have to, go through and learn all the settings and everything else. You just kind of want to dial things in and get moving. Well, then the MiG 205 DS is going to be your first choice, which is, I'm pointing at the camera like you can see that. This guy right here. What's nice about the 205 DS is that it has an automatic mode. You can literally tell it how many amps you want to weld, and it will set everything else for you. You don't have to do anything. It does come with charts and all kinds of other stuff to help you out and let you know, hey, for this thickness of metal, you need to run this particular amperage to start, and off in welding you go. And now what's nice about this machine is you can grow with it. It's got some custom settings in it that you can mess around with as you start to get better and better at welding, and it gives you that ability to grow, and for an entry-level price point. You also get 205 amps of current at 240 volts, which means that you'll be able to run it at full bore if you want to weld a frame, or you want to weld a thick piece of steel, or you want to weld, some thick fence piping or something of that nature. You'll have that ability. And you also have the ability to run various wire sizes in it from 23 thousandths all the way up to 40 thousandths wire. So it has a lot of room for growth. It's a great machine. So if you're just starting out, or you're even a hobbyist or professional that does a ton of MIG welding, that's a great choice to make. Now, on to the next one. If you're a welder that says, hey, listen, you know what? I've been welding for a while. I'm getting into it. I'm really starting to enjoy MIG welding, but I want a little bit more control over my stuff. I want to be able to control my wire speed. I want to be able to control my inductance. I want to be able to control my heat input. I want to be able to control a bunch of things that I can't do with the 205 DS. Well, then you buy the 250 Pro, which is a little bit more expensive. Again, it's a couple $100 more, but you then get 100% control over voltage, current, wire speed, inductance, arc penetration. I mean, you name it, you can set it in that welder. So if you're a guy who likes to tinker, and you're a guy who likes to, or a girl, who likes to get into the deep and dirty settings of a welder, then the 250 is going to be the one that you should really go for. That welder is phenomenal, and I personally don't use it as much as I would like, because the 205 does such a great job with the auto settings that I don't have to mess with anything. I give it a little positive inductance, and I just send it, and it goes right through everything I need it to go through. The 250 I kind of reserve for when I'm doing some heavier stuff, or metal that's a 1/4 inch thick or thicker. that I can really put the heat in with the 250. So again, different welders for different things. I have obviously 4 MIG welders here, and I have a TIG welder, and then I also have the capability of 3 more TIG welders. So having multiples as a professional or as a hobbyist who does a bunch of different things, then you're good. Just to remind you guys, we are still talking about welding mild steel here. We haven't gotten into stainless, titanium, aluminum, none of that. We're just focusing on mild steel. And welders you might want to choose if you're looking to just weld mild steel. So lastly is the Firstus MP200. Now this guy I got a while back before Yes Welder had actually released it. They sent it to me first to do a little bit of testing with it. It's a great machine. Everything in it works like it should. The welder works great. The TIG portion works great. The plasma cutter works great. And I will use that particular welder with flux core wire if I need to take it out in the field. Because then at that point, I have a plasma cutter. All I need is an air compressor and the plasma cutter works just fine. Then I have the flux core, so I don't need to carry around a gas bottle and a regulator and everything else that goes with it. So I pop some flux core wire in it. I run the plasma cutter, weld what I need to weld, and that machine is great for that. But truth be told, I think I've used it maybe twice. But in my industry, with what I'm doing on a daily, I need an ultra reliable, high amperage, 200 amp or better MIG welder, a dedicated plasma cutter, and so if one fails, I don't have to buy both of them. I just have to buy one. But the MP200 is going to be great for that person to put in their garage who wants to be able to do everything. Hey, I'm restoring a car, and I've got tons of body work to do. I've got a little bit of frame work to do. I have, some exhaust work to do, and I generally want to fabricate some stuff on my own. Well, the MP200 is going to be all those things that you need. It's going to be your plasma cutter to cut your body panels out. It's going to be your MIG welder to weld everything back together. It can be your TIG welder if you want to do some fancy stainless steel stuff. And you just have a great amount of versatility with that machine. Now, again, you run into the con of if one thing breaks, everything breaks. And then it's useless and you have to buy a standalone anyway. So I don't really have all that much use for an all-in-one machine because I'm always worried that something's going to break. But it can be useful in an instance where you're restoring your own personal car and you just want to have everything in one, spend $1,000 and call it a day. The machines are very reliable. I have not heard of any of them breaking down yet, so that's one thing to consider as well. Obviously, we're big Yes Welder fans here at the shop, but it doesn't matter what you buy. You can go out and buy Miller, you can go out and buy Lincoln, you can buy ESAB, you can buy Yes Welder, you can buy ATP, you can buy HTP, you can buy whatever it is that you want. It all depends on what your budget's like. The Miller stuff is excellent. I used to own nothing but Miller stuff. The Everlast stuff is incredible, which I don't know how well you guys can see it, but my big TIG welder, my water-cooled TIG welder's back there. 20 minutes on the dot. To summarize all of this, what I think you guys should be looking at is you're never going to need that guy. The flux core only welder no, just don't do it because you're wasting $150. You can't grow with it. You can't do anything with it. You can only flux core weld and that's it. You're stuck. The 205DS, a 200 amp MIG welder, is going to be perfect for all scenarios. Anything that you can think of that you're going to be able to do around your home or you're going to be able to do to get yourself started in MIG welding is going to be possible with the MIG 205DS. You want to get a little bit more involved in it, you're starting to learn a little bit more, you're outgrowing the 205DS as far as settings go, the 250 is your guy. You can set more up, you can play with it, you can really, really get into it, you can fine-tune every aspect of it, and you can learn more while you're doing it. And then you can even move up to a completely 100% digital machine and really, really get some interesting stuff out of it at that point. But then you're spending thousands of dollars on that machine. And then finally, the all-in-one. All-in-one is going to be great for you guys that want to have something at home that has a little bit of everything, but you're not going to be doing a ton of production work with it. So that will also give you the ability to learn. But again, the settings in the all-in-one machines are dumbed down a little bit because there's so many of them. You have your TIG welding settings, your MIG welding, your flux core MIG welding, your plasma cutting, all those settings have to be condensed so that the menu system isn't too hard to read. So all in all, if you're looking for a welder, the first thing that you're going to want to do, determine what your projects are. That's number one. What do I want to weld? What do I want to build? What do I want to fix? What do I want to do? Second, determine your budget. What do I want to spend? Do I have a $150 budget or do I have a $1,500 budget? That's going to determine that. Number three, do you want to continue learning or do you just want to finish your project? Do you want to get a welder you can grow with or do you want to get a welder that once you max it out, you're done? And four, overall, am I going to get into welding? Am I going to continue with this? Is the investment smart? If you're not going to continue welding, buy a cheap welder. If you're going to continue welding, buy something a little bit nicer like the Yes Welder stuff. And if you're planning on making this your career and you want to get into industry standard stuff, go after industry standard welders. I hate to say it because they're so expensive, but the industry standards are Miller and Lincoln. That's all you're going to see out there. Miller, Lincoln, and occasionally ESAB. But those are the ones that most of the larger manufacturing sites use, and therefore it wouldn't hurt to buy yourself one, get familiarized with the controls on it, so that when you do go try to get a job somewhere, you already know the controls for Miller, Lincoln, ESAB, all those guys. But with that being said, I hope you guys kind of got a glimpse into what choosing a welder is all about, choosing a MIG welder specifically. It's all about what you're going to do with it and you know what your end goal is with all of this. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I hope it gave you a little bit of information and you learned something. If you did learn something and you really liked what you saw, we'll continue to do more. And on top of that too, thank you so much for watching. Thank you guys all for subscribing. Really appreciate it. Really super helps out the channel. And we'll see you guys on the next one.